Swivl Sessions, interviews with field service entrepreneurs. Get insights and strategies from those who took the leap and risked it all to start their own home service companies. Man, what a great show with Adam and Danielle from the Bug Blasters. Jeremy, what do you got?
Tyson, Adam and Danielle, what a team. So personable, so friendly, so determined. Tyson, I wish I lived in the Cape Coral area and had a bug problem. I would love to have them over at my house. Anyway, what a great show.
They're those, I second that. They're those shows you just don't want to end. But, when you get two people that know what it means to fight through the tough days, to not be afraid, not every day is going to be great, but they have the best teamwork I've ever seen as far as business owners. So for people out there that want to know the right way to go about owning your own business, this is the show they need to see. So Adam and Danielle, the Bug Blasters, enjoy the show.
Welcome to Swivl Sessions, where we dive into the world of field service entrepreneurship. Now, before we get into today's interview, let's introduce the host you'll be hearing from. First, meet Edgar, our elusive sales guru who finally decided to grace the office with his presence this week. Well, today. Turns out those work-from-home snacks have been working on him a bit too well. He's rocking a few extra pounds that snuck up during Zoom calls and microwave burritos and fish tacos. But hey, at least he's here, and his sales charm still outweighs his newly added office insulation.
Well, gee, thanks, Rob, I think. Those are really kind words. Guys, I'd like you to meet John Tyson. Tyson's our resident customer service guru and sworn enemy of elevators. Operates out of an office that looks more like an abandoned storage closet. Tyson's office is a masterpiece of absolutely nothing. If minimalism were a sport, he'd be an Olympic gold medalist. Walking into his workspace feels like stepping into an empty rental listing, cold, lifeless, and making you question if anyone actually works there.
No, that's not accurate because we just moved into these new offices. So I'm still hanging stuff. All right, guys, last but not least, I want to introduce you to Rob. He is the man, he's the brains, the mastermind behind Swivl, but more importantly, the world's most avid, passionate hater of opera ever. If you ever want to see him run quickly in the opposite direction, Adam and Danielle just start singing in Italian. Okay?
Okay.
Take it away, Rob. And hey, good news, no arias on the show today.
All right, I wouldn't call it a hatred of it, just a little bit of, I'm not even sure how to describe it. I don't see it in the theaters, that's all. All right. Well, today we're excited to introduce Adam and Danielle, the founders and owners of the Bug Blasters, highly regarded pest control company out of Cape Coral, Florida, near Fort Myers. I can't say words. They offer a wide range of pest control services, and we're really looking forward to hearing all about their journey to entrepreneurship. So, Adam and Danielle, welcome to Swivl Sessions. It's great to have you here. How are things going over there in
Excellent.
Coral?
Very good.
Yeah, beautiful. Sun's out today. Did a service this morning already, and
Nice.
we're in the park here in beautiful Cape Coral today. Love
We're
it.
jealous.
Are you close to the ocean? Is it right? I'm assuming it's right near you.
Right behind us. Yeah. Out in the
wow.
bay here. I think the ocean, probably a boat ride. I'd say probably about 30 minutes or so. You're out there in the ocean.
Very
There you go.
nice. Very nice. Well, okay, guys. Well, so let's get started. Tell us your background. What were you doing before you started the business? And kind of give us a little backdrop on the two of you.
Well, I got into pest control about 2001, my first real job ever, first interview. And it was with a family-owned pest control business called Landmark Pest Control. And Larry, the owner, he was more than a boss. He was like family. I worked there until he unfortunately passed away. And the business got sold to a corporation. Stuck it out for a while and then kind of bounced around to other pest control companies. Then 2020, I found another little mom and pop family owned business and It was called ABC Pest Control. I started working in the office, and the owner's father was actually good friends with Larry, my original boss at Landmac. And Adam joined the pest control world. Unfortunately, ABC got sold to a corporation and it wasn't the same. So we decided it's now or never. And we took the plunge and we started our own, which has always been a dream of mine, to make Larry proud.
That's great. I love hearing that.
Well, that kind of bleeds into my question because we love to just kind of ask the blatant front end question of why work for yourselves? Why did you guys want to work for yourselves, and why did you start your business?
Yeah, great question. Working for other companies, you're not free to do different things, explore different methods. You're stuck using their products, their equipment, advertising, things like that. And we wanted to kind of explore that, and be free to do things of our own. And like the companies we work for, a lot of them were big corporations. So everything's like kind of poured in cement, you got to use this chemical for this long, and it was kind of too rigid, we weren't free to do what we wanted to do.
And they don't really focus on customer service, and that is my passion.
There you go.
That's what I've always done, and I like to take care of my customers like family.
That's good.
So that is another reason we decided as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I go and do services, and I was working for other companies, it would be 20 stops a day some days, and I could only spend a certain amount of time on the property. I felt rushed, and I just felt like the customers weren't getting the value, that they needed or the service provided. So there's a lot of cutting corners, and it was kind of frustrating.
20 a day, that's amazing. You're just running real fast there.
Yeah, Well, I see a similarity. When I go get my haircut at Great Clips, which I had to say I do, they crank it.
I go there too. They're not bad.
Well,
I go there too.
They've got that same philosophy where they're timed. Like they get dinged if they take too long on your hair. So it's in and it's out. It's in and out. And so I feel like I'm just a number, and I just can't get myself to go to some place that to pay a bunch of money and spend a lot of time. But it sure would feel nice to be pampered on more than like, hey, you're a number. It just seems like what you're doing.
You need to come to my Great Clips.
Yeah, I spent an hour on the job this morning. I spent a little over an hour there. I mean, I did the pest control. They're trying to sell their house. We get a lot of spiders in the area, in the pool cages above. And, I spent a lot of time cleaning up and sweeping up the property and removing bees. And they had a bunch of black widows inside the garage too.
Yikes.
So, yeah, nasty. A lot of eggs. So I had to clean up, get those out of there.
Seems like Florida is like a bug mecca of the world, right? Like never not busy, that's for sure.
One of them.
Yeah.
And we have iguanas too. They're really
taking over.
So
can you guys tell us that? Like what do you do? Like it's not just bugs, it's all kinds of critters, or
we do rodents, we do iguanas, we do mosquitoes, bees, fleas, bed bugs.
You do it all.
Yeah.
Oh, bed bugs.
We pretty much
me out.
do it all. German roaches.
What do you do with the iguanas? What's the trick there?
Yeah, it's tricky.
They're
so
fat.
yeah,
Please don't say cook 'em.
Wait. No. I thought about it. I mean,
It's like chicken.
yeah, that's what I heard. Chicken of the tree. No, I never tried them. I don't think I will. Yeah, so the iguanas are moving in. They started actually from Miami, I guess, and pet store burnt down, or people had iguanas as pets and they got too big and they released them. So now they're going crazy, breeding everywhere, and it's hard to trap them. Unfortunately, the only way really is to use an air gun to get rid of them.
That's sad.
Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
I know.
Do you guys hunt snakes, or do you stay out of the snake business?
We do not do snakes.
Okay.
No, I don't want to
I've
mess
heard
with
they're
those.
pretty crazy down there, right? Is there
Yeah.
an issue with snakes?
I've seen
Pythons.
probably about a 6-foot rattler crossing the road
Golly.
Yeah, one day I was driving, I saw it crossing the road, massive. But I don't know if I want to get in. If I was younger, maybe, but I'm not as quick as I used to be.
And then you ran over it, and then you backed over it to make sure it was dead.
I would have. Yeah, people don't want those around. Yeah, I mean, if kids
rattlesnakes,
playing in the
no.
woods or they get bit by one of those. Yeah.
Uh,
What about alligators? You have alligators down there, yeah?
We do, and we don't do anything with alligators.
I thought about it.
Either.
No.
I wouldn't either.
I used to work in the water. My very first job in Florida was actually dredging, and I traveled around the whole state of Florida dredging. Sorry, we just got down to 5%. I'm sorry to interrupt there.
We'll be quick, real quick. Let's go into I always like to ask about expectations. So the reason why you went in there was to get rid of that concrete, set in stone. You got to be the Great Clips thing in and out. So I'm sure you had other expectations that came with it. Maybe more freedom, not just to do your own thing, but to do your own thing personally. So how the expectations that you had before you went into business, how were they met or unmet, and what unforeseen hurdles did you have? And I guess that goes on the same lines as the.
I would say that they were unmet because we actually work more than we did before. It never stops.
Right.
We work the weekends, and then when we're not physically working, we're working on our website or doing advertising and marketing. But we're really enjoying it. We are.
It's tough because it's like a business within a business.
Yeah.
The web designing, we didn't have deep pockets going into it. We kind of used what we saved up a little bit, and we got a little cheap vehicle for now, and we do more of kind of word of mouth and Facebook groups, that sort of thing right now, and just spread the word, do great service, make customers. If you provide a great service, you're going to get great reviews, and that's what we're focusing on. I mean, I couldn't go there and do, half the job or quick in and out. I just can't do it. I'm just not built that way. I got to provide a great service.
Good.
So we're going to try and speed this up a little. So your customers, where you're finding them through the Facebook groups and word of mouth, who is your customer? Is it commercial? Is it residential? Like, what's kind of the basis of that?
We do both commercial, residential, and then also multi-unit, condos.
Yeah. Okay.
So we do the cities, some properties for the cities. So basically, we do a wide range.
Yep.
Excellent.
Recently, we picked up a storage company, and we're doing their pest control around there, and the rodent protections and stuff. So it's new, but I like it. It's interesting.
You're singing Rob's tune. This is what he loves.
I do. So when I hear someone, it seems like you're going after that repeat commercial business, right?
Yes.
And which is, I think, where the value is in any service company. You spend a lot of money for advertising to get that residential customer that may not be as repeat. I guess pest control, there is an element to that where it would be repeat if you get them on good service contracts, right? But like those, what fascinates me about companies that go after commercial is I feel like they have to balance their cost structure versus the volume, right? It's a trade-off, and you need to give them better price in order to get those work orders all the time. So how do you handle that?
We are keeping our services very affordable with exceptional service. And that's kind of how we want to do it. We want everybody to be able to afford service, and we don't have a big overhead. So that helps, and we're also huge into giving back into our community.
That's great.
People who have German roaches and they have kids and they can't afford it, we dive right in and we'll go out there and do it for them. And that's really important to us.
Absolutely.
Giving back.
Yeah, we have.
Good for
Guys,
you.
how's technology changed how you run bug blasters? What are you using as far as software? Are there any platforms that have helped you deal with your customers better?
We've actually switched a couple of times. I really haven't found one, so we're going to be hopping on to you guys in Swivl.
Nice.
Because we really did
Yeah.
did like what we saw, and it has the features that we are looking for. So we will, we're happy that we found you guys.
Yeah. Danielle mentioned it to me this morning, so I haven't had a chance to look at it, but that's like her big pet peeve is like a software that just kind of has everything, but is user friendly and not too complicated. Some of the other ones we use were kind of, there's too much to it, and it kind of just cluttered,
They could be
Just
kind
wants
of
to-
clunky, some of them, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, exactly.
They can be. Well, we always. Well, again, it's not about us on this one, but like our Swivl field service software. What are we saying now? It seems like it can be as simple as you want it to be, and as complex as you need it to be.
Yeah,
So
And that's perfect.
customizable.
yeah,
That's
we
exactly what
you
is
built it
needed.
as flexible as possible. So I hope you do get to use it and
Absolutely.
it helps you grow. So do
Yeah.
you plan on growing and hiring technicians and as your customer base grows?
We do plan on hiring. We do have, one of our old coworkers who is like family to us.
Mhm.
He's going to be joining us once we grow a little more.
Great.
Going to be very picky on who we have join us because we want the service done right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. That's going to be the hard part for me, I think, is hiring somebody and trusting them to do the service the right way.
Tough
It's
to
a
let
lot
go sometimes.
Yeah,
It
it's a lot of responsibility out there. You're driving around from job to job, representing us the right way, of
right.
high standard, a high bar.
We hear
And
that
I've
from a
seen
lot
it
of
all.
people.
I've
Yeah.
seen it all, and
Yeah.
so I'm, since I've always been in the office and routing them and taking the calls and stuff. I've seen it all.
It's I built a plumbing company, and that was always my hardest thing, was getting everyone in the company to kind of look in the same direction. And you get a lot of loose cannons, especially in the plumbing industry. But you get some good people. You keep them with you, because managing employees is certainly difficult, as you know, and from working with the bigger companies and
And my first boss, Larry, he always hired people who had no experience. I'm like, why are you doing that, Larry?
Mhm.
He goes, because I want them to do it the way I want it done. And they don't have any bad habits.
There you
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well
And I'm
said.
like,
good advice.
wow,
That's
that
great
makes
advice.
sense. And, he really taught me a lot, and we're actually doing everything that he used to do
Mhm.
because he was the person that everybody went to
Yeah,
for advice.
Like a mentor.
He's a huge
Yeah.
mentor.
That's great.
that's great. Well,
Adam, real quick, how are you looking
Yeah.
on charge? What's the charge that you're
Yeah.
okay?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys real quick, when did you start this business? I don't know if I got that information.
We started in April, like the process. He took his certified operator's exam to get certified in the pest control industry. And then it took a few months to really get going. So I would say July is really when we started getting
Wow.
customers, and
Yeah.
we are very new.
Very exciting for you guys.
That's
It was tough at first, because you can go on the web and look like how to start a pest control business, and there, like, the stuff, it was helpful, but there's a lot of stuff that wasn't in there. You just have to go through it and experience it. I was like, if someone asked us, how did you start it? I don't know if I could really answer it. Like some of the paperwork and stuff was tough.
Yeah.
And she did a lot
Cognitive.
of it. Like, I think it was more Danielle than me, really, with that part of it.
And it was
Well-
funny.
well said.
Because our boss, Nick, who we love dearly, he's like, it's not going to be that easy. I'm
Yeah.
like, what do you mean it's not going to be that easy? I've been doing it for over 20 years. Don't tell me.
Yeah.
well, that's kind of where I was going at with the expectations before and afterwards. I
Yeah.
hear it all the
He's like,
time. and, like, oh my God.
Customers just don't,
Now you got your answer, Rob.
come.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has been challenging, especially, we have a non-compete. So we're really starting from scratch, and it's rewarding that way. I think,
I think a lot of people that give up, too soon. You just can't give up. You got to keep fighting no matter what. You're gonna have your bad days, but you just got to fight through those bad days. There's days where I woke up and I'm like, the phone hasn't rang, and I just, you got to push each other. Like if it was just me starting it, it would be really, really hard. It'd be hard, but you can do it. You just can't give up. No matter what, don't give up.
Man,
keep driving, keep pushing forward.
Yeah,
that is generally.
And we're a good teamwork.
That's great. So generally, we wrap up these sessions with that question: like, what would you say to aspiring entrepreneurs that you would want them to take away from this conversation? So, some final advice for those guys, and I think you just said it: don't give up.
That was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was perfect.
Yeah, I my dad taught me just be a hard worker, just keep going, keep pushing forward. You're gonna have bad days no matter what, and expect those bad days to come. But put those. Don't think about it. Just learn from it. Keep going, best you can.
Well, we'll wrap it up here. I'm assuming you're at about 2%, 1%.
We're at 3%.
We're at 3.
Nice. There.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
It was the dimmer. It was the dimmer. Nice work.
Yeah.
Should have done it earlier.
What about your exit strategy? You guys going to build it up and sell it? That's your retirement, or is this like a lifestyle thing?
Hard question. That's tough.
It's a tough question now, I think, because we're so new.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to sell it because then our customers might not get taken care of the way we've been taking care of them.
Right.
I think we're gonna keep. We'll keep going and going, building it up, and
a legacy for our grandchildren.
That's great.
Our grandson is already loving to go hunt for rats and build rat traps.
Yeah.
Guys, it's criminal that you look as young as you do and you have grandchildren. That's
I was thinking the same.
That's amazing. It's amazing. It gives me hope.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we have a 6-year-old grandson Luke and a 1.5-year-old grandson Ashton.
That's great.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, 6 months in business, and typically I would ask like what your revenues were for the past year. How does it look? Is it you're seeing monthly improvements?
We are. I think right now our yearly revenue is at $29,000.
Right.
Reoccurring.
Yeah.
So,
that's I love the reoccurring word.
Yeah, we need a couple more like monthlies. We're gonna go around. I think we just landed one. They manufacture like homes, so I think we landed that for rodent control, and that'd be monthly.
Nice.
So yeah, we just got to go around and do it. We're already putting in 70-hour weeks, but hey, just keep going.
If you love
and
what
we're
you
surviving, as long as it's surviving, we're okay.
That's what it is. Yeah,
You're living your dream.
Great attitude. Great attitude. And you need to have that attitude when you're getting started. Just keep that attitude when you're seeing that success, and you're going to crush it. So I love that entrepreneurial spirit.
And when we get this edited down, you can use this. It'll help you guys out big time too. We're looking forward to doing that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're looking forward to it too.
Yeah. Sorry we put you off there. We
got COVID and
you're not the first.
Don't worry. We've been completely blown off.
You're not the first.
And then we were a little nervous too,
Yeah.
I was very nervous about.
Rob's always nervous.
You guys did great. So
awesome.
It was good talking to you. I wish we had more battery because I'm enjoying this conversation.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, I know.
Well, let's have a follow-up maybe in 6 months with these guys.
Yeah.
We should do it. That's right. To see where you're at.
Yeah.
That would be great, actually, especially if you jump on our service, and then maybe it helps you out. But
I definitely enjoy that part too.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and
we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Part one, I think, would definitely be, help out some entrepreneurs that are going to be looking at doing something like this, but probably not in your area. But certainly it would help them out. And again, a great enlightening conversation. And thank you to Adam and Danielle for sharing those insights and stories. And it's great to see you guys get off the ground with bug blasters. And for all of you watching or listening, if you're in the Cape Coral, Fort Myers area, and are in need of pest control services, make sure to reach out to the bug blasters. You can find their contact information right here on the screen.
Put your finger up.
And believe me,
there you go.
And believe me, you can trust that you're working with true, reliable experts in the field.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Once again, thank you, Adam and Danielle, for being here with us on Swivl Sessions. Thanks for listening or watching. Swivl's field service software is everything you need to run your field service for free. Till next time, check us out at Swivl.tech. That's SWIVL.tech. And that's a wrap.
Thank you.
All right.